Hello and welcome to Fanfic Fridays. Today we will be reading a story called Tandem by Bully Squattus. Basically, dodgeball goes absolutely right. Without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 1.
Don't you think this is all a bit unnecessary?
Ladybug questioned for about the 5th time since the duo had begun. They had been at it for hours, though to her it felt more like days. Perhaps he was forgetting that there was a real human girl on the other side of her polka-dotted mask. A real girl with a ton of real homework waiting for her back at home. Marionette thought with a grimace. Chat stood up from his previously crouched position to clutch at his chest dramatically, mouth agape and eyes twinkling. Absolutely not, he replied, straightening next to her and realigning their feet. Maybe you can live with a few cuts and bruises, but I have a more sensitive soul. This earned him a rather disgusted scoff from his partner, but he felt her fall into place beside him nonetheless. Although Ladybug found the idea of running acrobatic combinations to be a bit overkill, she could agree it was time for Paris's crime-fighting duo to step up their game. The last few Akuma they had faced off together were not your average villains, and each new fight took more out of the pair. Battles lasted longer, sometimes hours, and the physical toll was beginning to weigh on them both. Every morning, Marionette groaned as she rolled out of bed, the previous night's bruises patterning their way down her body. Comparably, Adrian seemed to find new scars every day, a big complication in his line of work. If Hawk Moth wanted to be tough, then they had to be tougher. The aim of this combo was to be both evasive and offensive, a perfect move to help avoid taking damage, as well as cripple their foes. Rolling his shoulders to ease the tension built up over the past few hours of exertion, Chat went over the motions in his head, visualizing every step before...
Duck!
The two heroes snapped into action. Both dove forward, springing to their feet within moments of each other. Chat hunkered down low, shifting his weight downward and coiling the muscles in his legs as Ladybug weaved around him. As soon as he felt the slim, strong hand brace itself upon the center of his back, he surged upward, helping Ladybug to spring into the air above them. Time seemed to slow as they reached the point of their routine that neither of them had seemed to been able to manage in their previous attempts. After vaulting off her partner's back, Lady was supposed to swivel in the air and whip her yo-yo out at the imagined enemy before landing. Meanwhile, Chat was responsible for swatting any projectiles out of her airspace, all the while preparing himself to catch her before she hit the ground. Needless to say, it was the last bit that seemed to give them the most trouble. As she arced into the air, Ladybug grabbed at her weapon, twisting her body to face the straw dummy they had managed to set up a few paces away. Quick as a shot, she flung her hand out, the end of her yo-yo zipping towards its target. Her aim was true, but there was no time for celebration, as Ladybug quickly felt her body hurtling back towards the ground.
I'm counting on you now, kitty.
At her approach, the boy squared his stance. He knew no amount of apology on his part could redeem him if he managed to somehow drop her for the 7th time. Chat grasped at the following heroine, quickly wrapping his arms around her waist and jerking her descent to a stop. Ladybug slid down his side, the duo almost toppling over before righting themselves. The reaction was delayed. Finally, 2 held breaths were released, and blue eyes met green in a triumphant flash. Ladybug extracted herself from Chat's embrace, planting her hands on the sides of her head with a dazed look. Her partner just danced around, yowling like the alley cat he was into the previously quiet night. "I told you we would get it," he exulted, dancing around her. "That was absolutely incredible."
Honestly, I'm just glad I didn't end up on the ground again,
muttered Ladybug petulantly. "Aw, come on, I apologized for that," Chat interjected, raising a hand. "Besides, we've got this down pat. In fact, I'd be surprised if I were to ever drop you again."
Then I guess you wouldn't mind if we ran it again?
Ladybug shot back at him confidently. Chat chuckled, watching her reset the target dummy before returning to their starting position. "Suddenly, my silly acrobatics don't seem so silly anymore, he teased. Ladybug rightened her stance, standing until their feet were edged up against each other.
If it keeps me from getting hit, then I guess I don't mind your dramatics, kitty.
He flashed her a grin.
You just mind where you put your hands when you catch me this time.
Before he could reply with some cheeky quip, Ladybug yelled out the start word, and the duo once again fell into the movements. Over the next few weeks, they continued to come up with additional combinations, slowly implementing their new strategies into battle. Given time, the movements became effortless. The pair worked in tandem, reading the situation around themselves while slipping in and out of position without even having to say a word to one another. Fight times dwindled, as did the number of injuries they sustained, and when Marinette woke up ache-free for the first time in what seemed like forever, she couldn't help but silently thank Chat for his ingenious, if a bit dramatic, solution. It was like a scene out of a cheesy high school drama. Red rubber balls sat lined up in the center of the gymnasium, 24 uniform-clad teenagers eyeing them with emotions ranging from trepidation to downright bloodlust. Their coach stood on the edge of the play space, reminding the antsy players of the game's rules. 1. If a ball hits you, you're out. 2. If someone catches your ball, you're out. If you hit someone in the head, you're out. You gotta love a game with only 3 rules. Adrian's classmates were practically snarling at this point, their bodies poised and ready to unleash hell. Despite the fact that he had no prior experience with the game, he found himself getting keyed up right alongside them. Nino had been hyping the game up to his friend all year. Although it was such a student favorite, the hit or be hit game was reserved only to be played in the final week before school let out. Rumor has it that the reasoning behind this was that so that any students maimed during the brawl could have ample time to recover over the summer. From what he could see, the teams were pretty even, with each side of the gym holding a balanced ratio of boys to girls, as well as athletic to, well, less athletic. Adrian took stock of the students behind him, their eyes flashing and their knuckles tensing. Even Marinette, the same Marinette who insisted on using a pink puffball-tipped pen in class, seemed armed and ready, a devious expression twisting her otherwise kind-looking features. As the coach was finishing his spiel about the mercy rule, Adrian glanced across the gym to lock eyes with Nino, sputtering as he watched his friend slowly drag a finger across his neck. Oh right, the unspoken 4th rule. There are no friends in dodgeball. The whistle rang out, everyone shooting towards the center line with banshee-like screams. Now, Adrian was quick on the draw. One could say he almost had cat-like reflexes, but he had barely made it halfway over before a ball went whizzing by his ear, stopping him dead in his tracks as his teammates surged past. Within the first 45 seconds, half of the players were out as a result of the bloody front-line confrontation. Marinette recognized this as a common occurrence. The beginning of dodgeball was always the most deadly. But she had managed to sprint her way to the center line, grab a ball, and hightail it back into safer territory, all without feeling the familiar sting of red rubber on her skin. Now she stood back, dancing on her toes as she tried to channel a bit of Ladybug into her movements. Suddenly, she spotted an opening. Marinette drew her arm back, whipping the ball forward to smack dead in Alex's gut. The smaller girl shot her a poisonous glare, the air clearly knocked out of her. But Marinette didn't have the opportunity to feel sorry before she was forced to swivel away from an incoming volley. The game continued in a similar way for the next few minutes, the number of players dwindling until just the truly skilled or the truly lucky remained. For once in his life, Adrian believed himself to be part of the second group, his continued presence in the game attributed to the mere fact he was quick on his feet. Through the maelstrom of red rubber, however, he somehow hadn't been able to get his hand on a single ball, a problem he intended to remedy as he saw one roll nearby. Before he was able to rush over and pick it up, however, Adrian spotted Nino once again, only this time his friend was clutching tight to a ball, eye alight with malice and focused right on him. Thinking to beat him to the punch, Adrian booked it to where he had spotted the ball, stopping short when he nearly collided with a certain pig-tailed team member of his. Marinette skidded to a halt, both she and Adrian hovering around the ball. Crush all but forgotten in her mid-game fury, she scooped it out from under him. Before Marinette had the chance to sprint off, however, she noticed his green eyes alight on something over her shoulder. "Duck!" he yelled, as she turned just in time to see Nino chuck a ball directly at the pair. Without thinking, she launched her forward into a tuck, one red ball whizzing over her while another lay nestled in her curled form. Finally, she popped back up, a blonde head rising right beside her. Perhaps it was muscle memory, or just the adrenaline of the game, but neither Marinette or Adrian registered anything out of the ordinary as they continued the oh-so-familiar movement. She circled him, looking for an opening across the court as he squatted down in anticipation. In a flash, her eyes locked onto their next target and she placed her free hand on the waiting shoulder blades beside her. Adrian pushed up with all of his might, aiding in the fluid motion of her action as he launched her into the air. In the split second she left the ground, he was already calculating the catch, body moving of its own accord as his hand shot out to grab a ball heading towards his chest, dropping it immediately in order to free up his grasp. Adrian angled his head up, watching her twist around and whip the ball towards the opposite side of the court, vaguely hearing a smack and cry before he expertly caught her in his grasp. Marinette landed solidly, assessing the enemy side as the duo split apart. She realized they were the only ones left on their team, before her eyes narrowed in on Kim, the sole survivor of their onslaught. Picking up a ball once more as the boy to her left did the same, she let hers fly with deadly speed. It hit her unsuspecting opponent at the same time Adrian's did, sending the large boy flying across the lacquered floor. The harsh trill of the coach's whistle rung out in the silent gymnasium. Everyone stood stock still, staring mouth agape at the two winners. Momentarily unaware of the scene they had just caused, the victorious duo turned towards each other, faces flushed and chests heaving as they brought their fists together. That small bit of contact seemed to snap them out of whatever sort of trance they were in. Recognition dawned. Marinette's eyes widened as the smile slid off her face. Adrian seemed to comprehend the situation a beat after her, arm falling numbly at his side as the puzzle pieces slowly clicked into place. Suddenly, raucous applause filled the space, winners and losers alike rushing forward to gush about the pair's display. It was all a dull roar in the back of Marinette's mind, even as Alia grabbed her arm, exclaiming something in her ear. Marinette's gaze never left Adrian's eyes. Chat's eyes.
Oh my goodness, that didn't just happen,
she thought, her mind straining to comprehend the implications of Chat Noir and Adrian Agreste being one and the same. Likewise, Adrian sensed more than felt Nino slapping him on the back. It was as if all of the air had suddenly left the room, leaving him gasping. The crowd surged between them, but he could still feel her stare, the intensity of her gaze, rivaled only by his own. I just played a game of dodgeball with Ladybug, Adrian thought numbly, allowing himself to be swept towards the men's locker room. Shock morphed into delight as he snuck one last look at Marinette. She wore a strange expression, one that only made Adrian's heart hammer impossibly faster. Foremost on her features was bewilderment. Not surprisingly, as Adrian felt the same sense of overwhelming realization. It was mixed with the same blushing expression he had come to expect from Marinette, all shy glances and stuttering lips. But underneath that was something else, something Adrian could only describe as purely ladybug. Sure, it was subtle, but it was the same look his lady got whenever they thwarted yet another villain. Seeing that same expression displayed in the features of the girl who sat behind him every day was enough to make his stomach drop. Before he could stop himself, Adrian sent her a very cat-like wink, reveling in the way she flushed deeper before whirling around and hauling Alia off by the arm. I just won a game of dodgeball with Ladybug, Adrian repeated giddily, an ecstatic smile stretching across his face as he turned to enter the locker room. He changed in a blur, mechanically responding to all the back thumps and excited compliments he received about his early performance. Adrian's mind was 1,000,000 miles away. Or perhaps just in the next room over, he thought slyly. He had found his lady in just about the last place he had thought to look. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please tune in next time for our next installment of Fanfic Friday. Everyone have a wonderful day.